Hello everyone, my name's Oliver East and I'm here to review Jabba's Palace, the Star Wars love letter game. I'm going to teach you how it's played and then we'll come back and give you my thoughts. At the start of the game, you're going to take all of this out of the bag, which can then be placed off to the side. These are your tokens that you are trying to win. These are going to give you victory and they're placed off into the centre of the table. Now, each player can get one of these helpful reminder cards. It goes through all of the different cards that are in the game and even tells you just in the small lettering at the side how many of them there are in the deck. So everyone is going to get one of these helpful reminder cards that you're going to need for the first game or two. You're going to take the main deck of cards and give it a good shuffle. Shuffling the agenda cards, you will pick one for the full game. This will be how you're winning at the end of the round if there's more than one person in. And we'll come back onto these at the end, but just know there's 4 of these, and while the Exalted one is basically the standard game, some of the others do vary that up a little bit, like My Kind of Scum, which will see potentially 2 people win the round. For the first game, the Exalted one is the recommended, as it is effectively the default, with the rest of them being able to be put off to the side. Taking your shuffled deck of cards, each player is going to get 1 card. 1 card is then removed from the rest of the deck and placed off to one side. If you're playing a 2-player game, you will also, at this point, flip over and reveal 3 cards, showing them to make sure that everyone can see what's been taken effectively out of the deck. This is only done in a 2-player game. You always remove 1, however. On your turn, you will look at the card in your hand and draw a second one from the deck. You will then choose one of your 2 cards to play. For instance, if I chose to play the guard here, I would choose another player and guess the number of the card that's in their hand. So I play the card out in front of me and say 5. Maybe not, because one of the 5s is already out, but they would secretly then look at their card. We wouldn't know what this actually was, and if it was a 5, they would flip their card over and be out of the round. If I had guessed it correctly, say I'd said 3, they would reveal, yes, it was a 3, and they'd be out of the game. In this 2-player game, I would then win a point because I'm the last one in the round. If I'd got it wrong, it would then be onto their turn, so say they would draw a card, and maybe they decided to play Bib Fortuna, which means they cannot be chosen by card effects until their next turn. So basically, they're playing it safe. They hold on to the other card that they had originally because they've played their new one. The game goes back and forward if no one wins until this deck runs out, which is more likely to happen in a higher player game. If when the deck has run out, there are still more than 1 player in, they will compare the numbers on their cards. Now this is because we are using the Exalted one as the agenda. Things are slightly different when using the others. But for this standard one, in this case, Chewbacca is the highest number, so would take a victory token. However, Han Solo has a special ability that if this is the card in your hand at the end of the game, you will also gain 1. Based on the player count is how many of these victory tokens you need to win the game. So in a 2-player game like this, you actually need 6 of these tokens. All the way up to when it's 6 players, you only need 3 to actually have won. If no one's won, then you're going to do another round. Let's just have a look at some of these card effects to give you a general idea, but that is how you actually play with the different card effects coming out of the deck. Playing Chewbacca here, for example, you choose another player, and if they have a card of that symbol, that's the Rebel symbol, whereas that is the Jabba Palace symbol in this case, if they've got that symbol and it's 4 or less, they are out. And of course, you're trying to get the other players out, because if you're the only one left standing, you get a victory point. While you saw the guard in the example I gave a minute ago, let's look at C-3PO. This is a very similar card because it's also a number 1. You would choose a player and guess their number. If it's right, they are out. However, unlike the guard, which is just, okay, that's your turn done, in this case, they get to ask you a number back and you can potentially be out. And this is obviously working because you are going to have 2 cards in your hand and you will have chosen to play C-3PO, so you'll still have this one in your hand. So if they guess 0, you would then be out. If we had this hand and you chose to play lair, you would draw 2 cards from the deck and then choose 1 to keep in your hand and put the other 2 at the bottom of the deck. So why not keep hold of Luke, putting the other 2 cards at the bottom of the deck. A lot of these cards have different abilities and effects, but that is how you play. You are trying to get these victory points by staying in the round, getting other people out, or, based on the agenda, normally having the highest numbered card in your hand. And that is how you play Star Wars Love Letter. As with the majority of the Love Letter series, the game comes in this very portable drawstring bag. Really quite nice to be able to throw this in your sort of bag, your pocket, whatever, for portability. But it's not where the production sort of stops. The cards are of good quality and it's going to take a number of games for any marks to show on them. And that's important because you don't want to know what the cards your opponents have, at least from marks on the back of them. You want to be able to sort of try and guess that. The actual tokens that you're trying to win have the sort of Jabba's Palace little icon on them, and they're very nice. They're nice, sort of quite robust sort of tokens. All in all, for a very small game, the production quality is very good. When it comes to gameplay, it doesn't stray too far from the Love Letter experience while putting on a number of twists and a completely new element to the game. So let's talk about the core gameplay. You are on your turn drawing and using 1 of 2 cards. And that's quite a nice amount of choice. If you're sort of in that new stage, brand new to the game, you're only reading the abilities of 2 cards, but you still do have that choice. And as the game goes on, you've seen cards that have been played and you're gaining that information of what others around the table have. And it's maybe not quite as obvious and as easy to keep track of in this version of Love Letter compared to the originals, but you are still getting the information as the game goes on, slowly trying to work out what your opponents around the table might have. So when you're playing those card effects to guess their number or to maybe get them out if they've got a higher number or a lower number and things like that, that's how the game sort of works, and it really still does feel from that aspect like Love Letter. A really fun, fast, sort of gather some knowledge and try and get other people out. That is a lot of fun, and that choice on your turn of those 2 cards, it really does work to sort of give you enough choice but not sort of overload you with too many options. As I slightly alluded to, in this Star Wars Love Letter, it's not as easy to keep track of the information. And that's because they have those unique cards that don't fit with that number. In the original, for instance, all of the 2s are exactly the same. In this, most of the 2s are the same, and in the third one, the R2-D2, is slightly different. For the most part, it's do kind of the same thing and then a twist on it. For instance, the C-3PO one is still a guard, effectively, of guess what your opponent's number is. But it has the caveat of if you're wrong, they kind of get to do it back to you. That's a fun sort of twist, and I like the fact that it's got those twists in this game, but it does make it a bit harder to actually explain the game and get it to the table. On top of the numbers not always being the same, the other twist in Jabba's Palace is the end of round scoring. Now, Interestingly, you only pick one of those at the start of the game and you stick with it. I was surprised, but it does mean the gameplay is that bit easier rather than changing it in and out each round and people maybe getting confused with how we're scoring this round. I like those. I like the fact that there is the default one of whoever has the highest card wins. But I like the options to be like whoever's got the highest Jabba's Palace and the highest Rebel card. That little twist just means that more points are being awarded each round and you play slightly differently, maybe holding on to that card or maybe using it in a slightly different way because of it. And I wish there were more than just 4 of those in the game. I feel like maybe it's hard to come up with many other win conditions. At the same time, there seems to be like there's 4 in there. We've got this idea that, you know, each game's gonna, you know, at the end of a round, if people are still in, this is how it's gonna score and it's gonna be different. And yet, only having 4 of those cards means, while they are different, and I love that, it's sort of given me the taste of something good, but they've not given me the rest of the plate. They've just given me that small little taster of it. And I kind of wanted more. Not many more. 4 is a good amount. Again, it makes the games do feel a teeny bit different, actually, and make you change your choices from one game to the next. But it left me wanting just a little bit more of that. If you're a Star Wars fan, will you like this more than the original? A tentative yes. While the theming is great and, you know, it's Star Wars, you've got the iconic characters and you've got the twists of the different sides and how some of the cards interact with that. That's all great, but it does mean that the game is slightly harder to teach and get to the table. And one of the things I love about Love Letter is how quick and easy you can just pull it out of your pocket, because this is still very portable, and get it to the table and be playing round after round. And I found that with new players, it took an extra round or 2 just for them to click with the gameplay. It still didn't take long, but because they couldn't necessarily see all of the same cards coming out over and over again, they sort of saw, oh, that one this round, oh, a new one the next round, I hadn't seen that style, that type of card. It just took them a few extra rounds to have seen all of the different cards, and then it sort of clicks once you've seen that. And I think it's probably Star Wars Love Letter's hardest part to sell. The different characters are cool, and the fact their abilities are different tweaks on them is great when you've got past that sort of learning step. If you're coming from one of the other Love Letters, you won't really have a problem. But a brand new player, it just takes that extra round or 2 for them to have seen the cards. And in a game like this, you want it to be hitting the table and just going from the get-go. That sounds pretty negative for a game that I'm actually going to be giving an 8 out of 10. I love the simplicity of Love Letter. This just adds a little bit to it. I like that. But getting it to the table with new people, if they're not a Star Wars fan, this one would stay in the bag, whereas the original would come out. With a Star Wars fan, seeing some of the characters, those twists on the abilities, lots of fun, and even though it's only a bit of a taste, those 4 different ways that at the end of the round's going to score up, they're fun, they're cool. They are different tweaks, and I think this is hands down better than the Marvel version and will be staying in the collection. Let me know if you are a fan of Love Letter and if you've played the Jabba's Palace version. Let us know what you think of it in the comment section below. And until next time, enjoy other news, reviews and such on the Dice Tower.